So my friend Jessica Courtney is coming over for lunch today, and I cannot wait to catch up with her. She is such a well-rounded investor. Not only does she run an amazing charity in another country, Iraq, she also does so much humanitarian work, and she takes the time to invest in real estate, all while being a mom with 2 kids and a husband. I met her a couple years ago when she joined my women's mastermind. And initially, I didn't really understand how successful she was. She'd only bought 1 property at the time, so most of our conversations revolved around her real estate. But as I got to know her better, I understood truly how much value she had, how smart she was, and how dynamic the business that she was building. What kind of value she was adding to the world, not just her own life. Her mission to help people who are in some of the worst situations of their life and put herself and her family in a really dangerous situation is not something that a lot of people would be willing to do. So I'm excited to catch up with her and learn a little bit more about what she's been up to. I'm gonna finish getting ready and we'll get cooking. I'm so excited to have you here for lunch today, but let's talk a little bit about what we're gonna eat before we catch up.
Sounds great.
Okay, so I know you live part of the year in, I'm totally country and I say Iraq, and I'm sure that's wrong.
Iraq works.
Correct me, how should we be saying?
We say Iraq.
Iraq. You live part of the year there, and so y'all eat significantly different than the traditional American diet. Do you eat many organ meats?
We do eat a lot of organ meats. I mean, every family uses the entirety of the animal. And so, yeah, we have really special dishes actually that use the organ meats and even like the eyeballs.
Really? Okay, so I was in Asia a few months ago with my husband, and same, they eat all the stuff. And it's because it's in Chinese, I don't exactly know what I'm ordering and getting, and I'm eating my soup, and there's like chicken feet in my soup,
Yes.
and all these different things, and you go through the market and there's like random animals that you can buy that are dried. So as Americans, we don't traditionally eat that. Like everything's packaged really nicely for us and supposed to be like not what it's meant to be, right? And so most of us don't realize all the health benefits that are inside those organ meats. There's tons of B vitamins. You can Google it if you want more information, but there's tons of B vitamins and lots of things for building muscle and iron and brain health and all these things. So I would really like to have the health benefits, but as an American, I am not the best at eating organ meats. So I want my kids to have it too. And we've started buying an organ blend, so it's like 80% ground beef, 20% organs. And we kind of hide that in whether it's our burgers or our chili or anything that you would use ground beef for. Normally, it's been a really great source for, my husband will eat it on its own, but for myself and the kids to get those nutrients. So,
And you just buy it at the grocery store like that?
I have not seen it at the grocery store. That's a great question. We were living in the panhandle of Florida for a while, and there was a local farmer that we could get it from there. And this was interesting. The local farmer, I could get it for $12 a pound. And here in South Florida at the farmer's market is $24 a pound.
Wow.
So we stock up on like a cooler of it when we're there, put it in the freezer and use it for our meats. But usually farmer's markets, you can find something like that. I'm sure you can order it online. I have not yet seen it in the grocery store though.
So find a farmer.
Find a farmer. Okay, so we're gonna make some chili with that today because it's something pretty basic that most American households have. Only you get to add that extra organ meat in for a few more nutrients.
Okay. Sounds delicious.
Do you cook very often?
I do cook.
Okay. Never know what the level is going to be there.
I don't like to cook 3 meals a day, but if I'm going to cook something, I like to cook.
Okay, so you want to chop up, you want to start with an onion?
Sure.
Okay, I want to show you if I got it. So one of the first things my husband ever bought me was these totally ridiculous, I cry like so easily at an onion. I had LASIK eye surgery and they like remove the things. So this is my goggles.
Okay.
For chopping onion. Totally ridiculous. You need onion goggles?
I don't need them, but you're welcome to wear them while I chop this onion.
Okay.
We're just cubing it.
Pretty small. Gonna go inside the chili, and we'll use it as a topping also. So you are back in town for a short period. Well, you dropped your daughter off. She's finished her 2nd year of college.
Yes.
And did you go look at the deal y'all wrote an offer on?
I did, yeah. So I'm back for like 4 weeks and I flew in to see my daughter for the first time in 3 months at college, and then flew back to Texas to look at a deal that I've been working on for, I don't know, maybe a month now. I've been looking at this property but everything remotely through my realtor. And so I went back to Texas for 5 days so that I could walk the property and see if we wanted to make an offer. And it was an amazing property.
So I'm curious to talk to you about a couple of those things. So you've come home from, I guess home is kind of relative for you right now, right?
Home is where my family is.
Truly, right? And so you've come back to the US for a few weeks to kind of get some housekeeping type things done, and then you're gonna go back because your husband and son are still there?
Yes, they are.
So you've been living out of the country for
20 years.
20 years.
Actually 22 years out of the country, almost 20 years in Iraq alone.
Okay, so you made the decision, you already had an 18-month-old? Mm-hmm. Had you had your son yet?
Well, when we initially moved overseas, we moved to Turkey and we didn't have any kids.
So talk me through that decision. You and your husband get married, he goes to seminary school, and how do you get from there to we're moving to Turkey and let's just take an even bigger leap and move into a war zone? Because 20 years ago looked a lot different in Iraq than it does today.
Yeah, and actually I probably should have used those glasses, but
You want them now?
this is a strong one. It's okay. It's in there. I don't want to trap it in. But yeah, we actually, 9/11 is what sent us overseas. Our church had already done some work in Turkey, and we wanted to be a part of the solution of bringing people together. And so we initially moved into Istanbul. And you know, it's really funny because for my entire life, we just say, we're going for 2 years. We're gonna do this thing for 2 years. And it always ends up being a much longer time than we anticipated. But we were living in Istanbul and just kind of started hearing other people's perspectives on the world and the war in Iraq. And then we started hearing about all of these widows and children who needed help. And a friend of ours was working there and they said, well, why don't you just come here and help us? And so that was the initial draw for us is.
What were you doing in the States before you decided to do that?
I worked for a church and I taught preschool. None of it was using my degree, but my husband was in seminary and I was the main financial provider for us at that time.
So your friend says, hey, we need some help here. And it was you and your husband have a really great tagline for your mission. Can you share that for us?
I can. When we first left, we left under this idea of love anyway. And it was this idea that maybe the world would be a better place if instead of waiting on someone to earn our trust and love, we just gave it to them at the top. What do our communities start to look like when we decide to engage the world in that way? And so our friends already knew that about us. And when they asked us to come and help, it just felt like the next right thing to do.
And at this time, you've got a 18-month-old, you hadn't had your son yet.
That's right.
So you pack everybody up, you move to first Turkey and then Iraq. What happens next?
So we get into Iraq and it's like this whole different world than we imagined. My husband went and visited at first and he came back and he was like, there's no electricity, there's hardly any water. Like, I do not think we can do this. And I was like, of course we can. Of course we could do this.
I feel like that's your response to everything.
Yes, and so we pack everything up, go across the border, and come back, or we arrive, and it is so much worse than I ever could have imagined.
So you hadn't actually been there yet?
No, I had never seen it, and it's literally 1 hour of electricity. I've got this 18-month-old. If you have 18-month-olds, you know that they're like the messiest, creatures on the planet, right?
Wash our sheets like every other day.
The sheets and the clothes and all of that stuff.
Spit up and everything.
We move into a super dusty place and we have 1 hour of electricity from midnight to 1 in the morning. And we just make it work. She and I spent a lot of time at home. My husband was out working and we were probably only there about 6 weeks before we found out I was pregnant with my son.
Oh my gosh. With no power.
Yes.
And you're in this, 6 weeks isn't even enough time to adjust and get comfortable.
That's right. Yeah, so I'm doing all of that with all the hormones and all of this. But we were young and it was just this incredible adventure to be on. And we had so much purpose that it made all of those other things possible.
So let's take a second and add some of our stuff to the pan. So we've got our onions, our poblano, and our serrano. I used to use primarily bell peppers, But I wasn't finding that it gave it a ton of flavor. And my whole goal is that my family gets a wide variety of nutrients, and my kids eat bell peppers really easily. They're not gonna go out and eat like a poblano and a serrano.
That's true.
And so this gives them a little something extra for some of the nutrients that they're getting. So let's go ahead and add this to the pan and get
the peppers as well
cooking. That would be awesome. So I'm curious.
I'm here for you.
Obviously, living there isn't free, and you've got one baby you're taking care of. I'm sure things don't cost there what they cost here, but how are you funding something like this?
So all of it was funded from like self-fundraising from friends and family who really believed in our mission and wanted to be a part of it. Yes, through a charity. And then we ultimately we started a like B Corp, but then people selling locally handmade shoes. And then our friends.
In Iraq?
No, we were importing them to the US.
Okay.
And then our friends were like, we cannot buy any more shoes, but we really want to help you because we were trying to help build some of the medical infrastructure inside of Iraq. And so they said, you've got to start a nonprofit. And we were like, well, but we're business people. We don't do nonprofit. And they were like, well, a nonprofit is an easier way for us to support what you're doing.
A tax write-off
right, with the tax write-off, all of that. So we started a nonprofit, and our life just kept growing from there. So our initial years were developing the medical system, helping kids who needed heart surgeries. And then in 2014, when ISIS invaded, it really flipped and grew everything that we were doing because there was so much more need around us.
So how do you get, I don't even know how many years ago it's been now, a couple years ago, and you had started investing in real estate. How did you get from, I'm running this charity in a foreign country to, hey, I'm gonna buy some real estate? That seems like a total left turn.
Yeah, well, we actually had already invested in real estate before I decided to kind of actually make it a side hustle for myself. And because we were living in a conflict zone, my husband was going into some of the most dangerous cities. He wrote a book. And then right after that, he went to the city of Fallujah, which has, if you know the history of the war between America and Iraq, it's like some of the most devastating things happened in the city. It was just a really like stronghold for the Iraqi army. And when my husband went, he kind of went under the cover of night without a visa, like without the official visa. The doctors just brought him into a conference and they put him on stage and they said, this is the first American to be on stage or to be in Fallujah without a gun. And it was a really like interesting moment for that city, but really for our lives, because the day before at night, I had put my husband in the Suburban and he left and we didn't know if he was coming back. Like he wrote letters to the kids. He wrote a letter to me. We just didn't know what to expect.
I can't imagine how strongly you must feel about your mission in order to be willing to do something like that. Like the sacrifices and the stress of the maybe what ifs that could happen to your husband, to your kids. And it's almost like being a missionary, only you're not a missionary. I mean,
yeah, well, we walked that path and then we shifted really to meet physical needs of people because we felt like that was so important. And the mission was important because to us, it's for the good of the future of humankind, right? There's the one that gets helped, but then there's like, how does it bring us all together in the future that was so important to us? But what I realized in that moment is I couldn't keep doing that. Now that we had 2 kids, I couldn't keep doing that without some kind of safety net. And so we had a conversation that we would take all of his book advance and invest it in some property in America.
Meaning when he wrote the book, he got an advance from the publisher. You used that cash to buy your first real estate investment.
And so we took that cash, plus we added everything we had in savings, and we bought like a townhome in Waco, Texas, near Baylor campus, because we knew it would always have students coming in every year. And that was like the safety net. If something happened to Jeremy while he was out or to me while I was out, then the other parent could always take the kids back to Texas and have like some income to live off of while building whatever the next season of life would be. And so real estate was initially, it was the safety net, it was the investment.
So let's talk about it a little bit. You paid how much for this first townhouse?
We paid $63,000.
Oh my gosh. Okay, how many years ago was that?
That was like, I think 2012 or 2013.
Okay, so like 13-ish years ago.
Yes.
Do you know what it's worth now?
We just got a new tax assessment and it was $179,000.
Okay. And do you know how much you cash flow each month from it?
About $1,250.
Okay, so I feel like that's like a point that we should talk about, because long-term rentals sometimes get a bad reputation, because we talk about how you're gonna be buying long-term rentals until you die to replace your income. And I think it's so sexy on social media to talk about, like, you're ready to leave your job. We want to leave your job in the next year or whatever. Like, I'm going to replace my income. We see it with our coaching students, right?
We do.
But there are legitimately people who love what they do for a living or have really high paying jobs.
Yes.
And they're just looking for another option, whether it's retirement or a backup plan, and they want to put some cash somewhere.
Yeah.
You get great tax benefits. And then you have this paid off property that you've had to do, you have it with the management company?
It's with the management company, and I forget about it. Like, I really do forget about it until the monthly statement comes in or something, and I'm like, oh yeah, we have that. In fact, when I apply for loans, like, I forget to list the property, and my husband or my CPA is always reminding me, what about the Waco property?
So because you're essentially getting like $14,000 a year from that.
Yes.
And you don't even think about it. It's truly passive for you.
Absolutely. In fact, I saw it for the first time last year in 2024.
You haven't even seen it yet. Okay.
Yeah.
So if somebody truly enjoyed their job but wanted extra income or a backup plan, every couple years, once you've saved up your money, you could buy a property like this. And eventually, when it's time to retire,
That's right.
you have your entire income still coming in every month.
That's right.
There's a book called Small But Mighty
Yes,
Investor.
I love Small But Mighty.
By Chad Carson. And it kind of talks about this. Like, everyone doesn't have to have these like private jet goals. To literally have a few small properties that add up to an income really creates this life with stability and freedom, as opposed to going all in with like, because sometimes when you think you're going to be this full-time real estate investor with this financial freedom, you've literally just replaced your job with another job. Because if you have too much debt, it's literally an active income.
That's right.
So I'm curious, how long before you bought your next property?
So I didn't buy another property until 2023 for myself. And so my journey's a little weird because I've spent, 20 years working with refugees, and I've rebuilt hospitals and houses and all of this for other people, but not for myself. So the next property I'll say that we bought like for ourselves was in 2023, and it was a campground.
Okay. Yeah. I remember I was your coach.
That's right.
Campground. Yes. So you and I met when you joined my women's mastermind. And I remember only knowing you as you had that first condo or townhouse.
That's right.
And the more I got to know you, I'm like, this lady's like information does not add up to only owning it
doesn't make sense.
Let's figure out what else is here. And your history with all of the charity and the business and all that you've done through that environment has given you such a well-rounded background that you have this huge wealth of knowledge. I feel like every time I'm trying to figure something out, I can ask you, and you have these creative questions to help me come to the answer that I need. So it's given you some amazing skills that make you really well-rounded.
We ran programs across 6 countries, and with staff of over 120 people. We raised over $100 million. We ended up like learning along the way and figuring things out as they go. And I love when I get the opportunity to share that knowledge or ask about the things that I encountered along the way.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about something that I feel like you avoid a little bit when we're in group settings. So I feel like, and I don't even know how to ask you this question. Do you think, and you're going to come up with a political way to answer this, it's not going to be a direct answer. Do you think you're a Democrat?
I don't actually think that I'm a Democrat. I think that I fall somewhere in the middle of all the policies. And it's because I've seen in like real practical, real life lived out ways, the ways that policies affect individuals. And so it's hard for me to look at any party and say, I'm with them. I want to look at every policy and say, how does it affect me and my family, and how does it affect my neighbor?
And so the reason I ask you that is because I feel like the environments you and I are in, we are always with people who are really heavy on the Republican side, which makes sense because we're in an environment with real estate investors that traditionally lean, obviously not everybody, but traditionally lean more towards Republican side of it. And you are one of the few people who follows the wrong word, but
engage maybe?
You believe quite a lot of the things that they don't. and you do great in either environment. Because for some reason in our culture now, people seem to not even be able to communicate when they don't have the same beliefs anymore. I don't know what has happened. Because when I was younger, it didn't work that way. But even now, families can't sit at the same dinner table and have different political opinions. Friendships get lost over it. People don't date people because they're a different political party. And it's become this pretty big divide in our country. And you somehow manage to sit in the room with people who almost all of them are way far on the other side. Even if you find yourself somewhere in the middle, they're on the way opposite side of you.
It's true.
How do you think you do that?
I think if I've learned anything over 20 years of living in a place that was literally attacked by my country, it's that people have politics and then they have the way that they actually live their life. And so I have friends in the mastermind who do believe politically so different from me, but then they're using their properties to help people out, or they're not making people pay rent for 6 months because they understand how they have actually, how much better off they are in life than whomever their tenants might be. And so I try not to look at a person and put their political blanket on them. I try more to just see the person and how they live their life and engage with them that way. And so if I'm doing that, then I don't need to engage at this top line political level, because I don't have any identity in who our leaders are or what their policies are. My identity is in how I live my life. So I want to relate to people and how they live their life.
Yeah, that makes sense too, because while I do lean further on the Republican side, I obviously have a husband who's an immigrant and and daughters who are half Chinese, which is not a popular thing right now.
That's right.
And with all of the border stuff, I definitely think everybody needs to come here legally, but then there's people who don't think anyone should come here at all, right? And our whole country was built on people coming here. I am much in favor of build a bigger table instead of a higher wall. However, that is not always the popular opinion. And don't get me wrong, I still think people need to come here legally, because lots of people work really hard to get that, but it's not always the popular thing to say in the different environments that we're in.
I don't know how that became a dividing line for us, but it really did become a dividing line for us. You know, I have a friend, she is as staunchly Republican as it gets, and she actually is close the borders, don't let anyone in. But she has a tenant who isn't exactly legal to be here, and she helps protect them. And so it's this is what I'm talking about, is that when we can separate our personhood from the decision that's being made, it's really easy to just jump in line with everything that's being said and say, no, this is what I believe. But then practically, how's it playing out in your life? I think if we focused a lot more on that, we all might find that we have more common ground than we think that we do. But you know, I've been to multiple countries. I don't think I have ever crossed a border illegally, but I always have to get a visa to go into those countries, and I do take the time to plan. And I know for people coming out of conflict, that's not always possible. But there is always that gray a little bit. They do have repercussions.
You have to come there legally.
That's right. You have to come there legally. But in a case of between Syria and Iraq, when a bomb goes off and somebody needs to run, they will run across the border, and it's not in an official checkpoint, and they don't have their visas, and all that does get figured out later. But if we look at a global scale, at immigration and asylum, there are policies and procedures that each country does choose to enact and to follow. And so I think when it comes to that question, what I would want us to consider is just what do we want our actual policies to be, and how does that orient us to our neighbors, you know? And so there is a good policy that we can come to around all of that keeps everyone safe and allows us to also offer a safety net to others.
So for 10 years, you forget about your real estate.
And my bank account's just building.
And all of a sudden you're like, I'm gonna buy an RV park.
That's right. I was a little busy because those were the years that ISIS was in Iraq.
So how did you circle back to hey babe, we should buy an RV park? Because that's kind of random for the situation you were in.
Absolutely. I'll just say it was a bad partnership. I think that led us to looking for other ways to protect ourselves. And so one of the things that you don't think
and now
about—
you're talking about protecting yourself financially.
Well, and our children for the long term, because we really had invested at that point 15 years in other people's well-being. And of course we benefited from that, and I learned so much from that. We didn't really understand that when you build and lead a nonprofit, you don't have equity in that thing. And
I don't think I realized that either.
yeah, and so you can give your whole life to building something pretty phenomenal, develop some incredible skills, raise a whole lot of money, help millions of people, and then at the end of the day, you can end up with nothing in the bank account and you don't actually own the business that you built. That left me feeling really vulnerable. And so I started looking for ways so that we could like have our cake and eat it too. That's our passion. That's what we want to do. That's our calling in life, if you use that terminology. But I wanted to do it with a bigger backup plan than just one condo.
Okay.
And I wanted to do it with women who would encourage me and celebrate my success.
Wait,
in it.
how did you find my stuff?
Instagram.
Oh, okay.
I really think God sent it to me. And there was like this group, it's the ad that talks about not wanting to go to the play dates.
Shut up. Okay, I feel like half of our women have joined over me, and that was literally me answering a guy on a podcast that wanted to like group me in as like a stay-at-home mom.
Yes.
And I'm like, I don't want to go on any play dates. I hate mom's group. I'm like the most awkward person at a kid's birthday party. Like, I do not want to do that. There is nothing wrong with women who love that. There's
Absolutely.
nothing wrong with saying like, I don't fit here.
That's right.
And so feeling like I wanted to find a group of women that were having the same kind of conversations as I was, and like I feel like I could celebrate victories with and call and be like, oh my God, I'm gonna lose $1 million if I don't fix
Yes.
this problem. Like, those people couldn't understand that, and so I'm just like alone inside my own head with all of these ideas and nobody to talk them through with. And that's how I created the society. And it's interesting that that is the ad that seems to have attracted the most women in our group.
I think it doesn't make sense. Even though there's so many women who are doing this, it doesn't make sense to so many people that it's okay for women to be successful. And it's okay for women to have something outside of their family, that it's actually for their family.
And it's not like a feminist thing. It's
That's
not
right.
like I hate men, I'm doing this all on my own.
That's right.
We can love our husbands and love the idea of marriage.
Absolutely.
And want to be successful women. And that was where I wasn't finding. There was either these groups of like, they were the men's wives, and the men's were truly the real estate investors and the brain of the business, right?
Yeah.
And they stayed home with kids. Or it was like I hate men. Like, those were your two options.
Yeah.
And so I would find myself at these dinners where I was sitting with the wives, but I related more to the husbands, which wasn't appropriate. And then the other group just didn't fit in. So it's interesting that that's what you found. So you see the ad. Did you know you wanted an RV park before then?
I knew I wanted a real estate-based business. At that point in time, I wanted to do more than long-term rentals because we weren't going to get where I wanted to go. We invest in like gold and silver, we invest in the stock market, and we had the one long-term rental property, and I wanted to do something that was going to generate more income, which meant it wasn't going to be completely passive. But remember, like, I managed 120 people across 6 countries. Like, how hard is it to manage an RV park remotely? I knew I had that skill, and my coach actually, after I joined, that's what pushed me over the line to purchase it. It's like, I've never run an RV park before, and she was like, if you can run a team in Syria and Iraq, you can probably, run this RV park remotely.
Challenging.
Yeah,
right?
and it was really great advice for me because it pushed me over the line. I purchased it and haven't looked back. I just keep moving forward.
Let's take a second and add some more things to our chili here. So night before last, we finished making our bone broth, which also has a ton of health benefits and collagen and all kinds of lovely things. You could totally use store-bought beef broth if you didn't have access to something like this, but this is just another way for us to get a ton of nutrients for the kids without having to try and force them to eat something they don't want to.
Roasted.
And then for this, I either used the fire roasted tomatoes from, I get them at Whole Foods, or you could use something like Rotel.
Those are beautiful. I didn't know you could buy pre-roasted tomatoes.
Yeah, yes. I would love to roast them myself, but I use this meal as something that's quick and easy, healthy, and everybody in the house eats it. And then I get the tri beans, which are literally just a can that comes with like pinto beans, kidney beans, and black beans. We put 2 cans of those in here, and we're gonna put some seasonings in and let this cook for about 20 minutes. We'll add a few more seasonings.
It looks beautiful.
So you decide to buy this RV park. It's 2023. You've still got everything going on with your charity.
That's right.
Abroad. What happens next?
So I have to come back to sign the papers. So we come back to the States. It took me 6 months to buy it because I really wanted seller financing and these really specific terms. And so we took ownership in December of 2023. And I already had the manager and everyone lined up.
Was I your coach at the time? Because I think I remember you on closing day, there was a bunch of stuff you didn't know. And you were trying to figure out if you should,
I was texting you.
and
Yes.
you figure out if you should actually close.
Yes. Well, and I called my CPA as I'm driving from Texas to Oklahoma. I called my CPA and I'm like, do I need this thing and this thing? He's on vacation because because he had just finished a big tax deadline or whatever. And he's like, I don't know, in Italy or France, and he answers his phone and he's talking me through stuff, but there's just some things you don't know until you get there. And I purchased
a lot of things that you don't know till you get there.
Yeah, and so, but I had the right systems built around me so that I could move all of that forward.
That makes sense. And so we buy the RV park. Where are you getting the money to do this? If you're running a nonprofit, how are you and Jeremy making the money to do this? Is it his books?
So some was from his book advance. He wrote a second book, and some was from that advance. We also just saved, and this is something I think people don't talk about either, is sometimes you have to live beneath your level so that you can prepare for the kind of life that you want in the future. And so we lived on less than half of our income, which we're living overseas. We're living in Iraq, and of course things are a little bit cheaper there, but we are really good savers, like sharing a car, and we don't spend a lot going out to eat on food. We eat at home, and all of those things that just make life a little bit easier. And so we had saved for, I don't know, since the first condo, we had just been putting money into savings, and we used that as our down payment. But I also spent 6 months negotiating with the seller to make sure that she would hold the note for us at a really good rate, but at a low down payment so that we could get into the property.
So something that I learned from you is you were also putting money in stocks.
Yeah, we learned this after the RV park.
Okay, talk me through it.
Yeah, so along the way we were investing in stocks, and we did have a 401k, and so a lot of people think about taking out loans off of their existing properties or a line of credit from the bank based off of their equity.
People refinancing their property or getting a home equity line of credit to go buy their next deal.
That's right. But you can do the same thing with your stocks. Depending on who your broker is and what banks you use, you can get 40 to 60% of essentially the equity from your stocks. You can take that out without selling a single stock. So you're not paying taxes on it. It's not a gain, it's a loan. And your stocks keep growing without you having to sell any of them off. And it's a line of credit. And so it can be called an S block or a margin loan. So if you are someone who is a high earner, or you've been investing in stocks for a long time, it's a great way to pull your money out without actually losing anything.
So,
and use it.
The idea of this sounds like it's the best of both worlds. But talk me through, because I know that you talk to me regularly about how the interest rates are so good. You don't like getting money from somewhere else. It also makes it tough for you to raise money because the interest rates are so dramatically different. You're always like, I'd just go get it from my stocks instead.
That's right.
So it all sounds amazing, but what's the downside to it?
I think the downside to it is that they could call in the margin. And this year has been really tricky because the stock market has been so up and down.
Talk to us about what call in your margin means.
And so that means if your bank only allows you to take out 60% on margin, you have to have enough stocks above that you're always maintaining that 60%.
So it's almost the same as being able to have 60% debt, and if something changes in the value of your property, the bank can call your loan.
Yes, but they don't call the full loan. You just have to pay down to that 60%, which can come from selling off more stocks or something. But I mean, it's a debt, right? It's a loan. The amazing thing about it, though, is that it's interest only until you want to pay back the principal, and that you get a really low interest rate. So we're like prime plus 1% or something. And when everybody else is borrowing private money at 10 and 12%, it does make it hard to go look for private money when you can be your own bank.
So with that in mind, why don't more people do this? Do you think they don't know? Do you think it's a little more complicated to understand? What is the like barrier to entry? Like, why are other people not using a method like this?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of things. I think a lot of people put money in stocks and think about it as retirement. And for some reason, we don't want to touch retirement. It's like this sacred thing we would rather wait till we're 60 or 65 to use that money than take the risk and bet on ourselves now that we actually are smarter and could make more money from that if we pull it out. In my mind, I'm invested two ways when I use that loan. It's the same money, I get to use it twice. A second reason is I think that a lot of people, they just don't know about it. The last reason is so many people are like, I invest in the stock market or I invest in real estate. There's this dichotomy instead of looking at all of them together to see how a diversified portfolio can really help to move you forward.
How did you learn about this?
Talking to my broker, because we did sell and pull out money whenever we invested in the campground. And I kick myself to this day because if I would have known that, we wouldn't have done that. We would have just borrowed from ourselves. We sold stocks.
And so you sell the stocks, and how did you figure out that you made the wrong choice?
We were ready to make another investment. And we just were asking questions about what are some other ways that we can use this money? I think a really beautiful thing about investing in real estate is you learn more about money than you ever will doing any other business.
Yes. And there's no like YouTube video to watch, because there's every option, there's like 10 million different strategies that work for different people in different situations, because not everybody has stocks, not everybody has the same amount of stocks, not everybody's looking for the same returns, or some people need cash flow right now, some people want appreciation, like it's all different. And so there's not a YouTube video to watch for it. It's literally deciding to jump in, take some action, and figure that part out.
Buying the campground taught me to think more creatively and strategically about how to buy property. And it took that purchase to kind of unlock that part of my brain. And then from there, my husband and I were like, okay, money really is everywhere. It's available to all of us.
Because people say that, but they don't exactly talk about where.
Right, but when I coach women, I'm like, let's look at everything in your life and see where you already have equity. Because people only think about it as in their own home, or they don't think about their stocks or whatever.
Or they think about savings accounts.
Yes, and so we really, I don't know, you have to kind of unlock that mindset in yourself to realize it's there, but you've got to figure out where the keys are to unlock it. Yeah. And keep talking to people and asking questions. Like, nothing's a stupid question. And the more questions you ask, the more you're going to learn to be able to take that next step higher.
Listen, y'all, I know today's episode is inspiring, but inspiration alone will never carry us to our ultimate goals. That's why I started the Society of Entrepreneurial Women. It's a mastermind for high-performing female investors and entrepreneurs who are living their lives unapologetically. In a world where most people don't get us, or they try to keep us confined in a small box, the Society exists to turn off the brakes and set you free. We have weekly calls covering investing, wealth building, health, relationships, family, and a whole lot more. We have small tribes to hold each other accountable to our goals. We have in-person, ladies-only retreats to disconnect and drive each other towards our dreams. And most importantly, this is a community where you can be unapologetically you. Celebrate your wins, scream your successes from the top of the rooftop, become best friends with women who get you. We're 3 years in, and I can honestly say my best friends today are all from the Society. Click the link in the show notes to learn more.
Yeah, so let's take a second and talk about what we're gonna do next. This is my favorite new kitchen gadget.
It's really cool.
While it doesn't look like much, it saves me hours. So bagged cheese is not good for you, like pre-shredded cheese. You can look it up. It's got caking agents and different additives, and it doesn't taste quite as good. So I started out, and remember, my family has 7 people in it. And so we grade carrots and cheese pretty much every day, whether we're having salads or chili or whatever. And it was taking me forever to just grade carrots and grade cheese. And I loathed it, but I loved the way it tasted. I'm like, there has got to be an electric version. Obviously there's food processors, but those, by the time you put them together, wash all the parts, it's a pain in the butt.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So I found this on Amazon.
Is it gonna shoot it?
It is. Is it called some kind of shooter? Yeah, it's called a salad shooter.
Oh, okay.
My husband got it for me for Valentine's Day, and as dumb as that sounds, it is like the best gift ever. So if you plug it in on the side,
it's plugged in.
We're gonna put the cheese in the top and this here, and then just kind of aim it down at the plate when you turn it on.
I'm glad you said that, because it probably would have gone at you.
just like that, we have the topping for our chili. And so you're getting these margin loans and you decide you're gonna buy something else. What do you buy next?
So I bought an assisted living next, but I bought it on accident. I was looking for an Airbnb close to the campground because I wanted to maximize staff and
that economies of scale we always talk about.
That's right.
Yep.
And so I found this 9-bedroom house. I actually saw it in maybe the August before I bought the campground. So I'd been looking at it for a while, but I was finally back and could actually like show up. And when I went to look at the property, I was talking to the owner and she was running it as an assisted living business. And she said, oh, I really wish that I could find a buyer who would keep the business. And I thought.
Meaning she wanted it to keep operating.
She wanted it to keep operating because there were 24 men who lived there and she didn't want to displace them, where they would have to go find some other place to live.
I feel like that those words in that industry get used interchangeably. There's like residential assisted living, there's senior care facilities, there's like we put them in a retirement home, there's all these words.
Yes.
The one that you're talking about, is this like a neighborhood house that's been converted?
Yes.
Or describe to me what that actually means.
Well, it was actually built as a rooming house.
Okay, so it's not this like sterile hospital
70 years ago,
facility.
That's right.
It's more like a house. How do 24 men fit inside a residential house?
So when you get into residential assisted living, if you start really looking at the details, there's a vast majority of clientele who can live in these homes. And you have to pick like one, you have to cater to one of those. And so where we are, we can put a bed for every 150 square feet inside of a room.
Okay.
And so it's 9 bedrooms. That's how we get to 24 guys.
Okay. And do they share rooms?
They do share rooms, yes.
Okay. And are these, because I always think of that as that means these are like older people. Does it mean older people? Does it mean
this
rehab?
is our house. Yeah, our house caters specifically to men who have mental illness.
Okay.
And they're such a great group of guys. I really love working with them, and I've spent a lot of time since I've bought it. I've spent a lot of time up there with them, more by choice than by necessity. I enjoy the business. I enjoy being there. And when we bought it, it felt like a continuation of who we are and like what we want to do in the world. And so it wasn't just like, I actually think an Airbnb would have stretched me further because hospitality is not my passion. My passion is vulnerable communities.
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising, and I don't know that you knew this when you were doing it, how it fits so much with your original mission.
It does, yeah.
So you get this first, are we calling it a residential assisted living care home? And you actually did something you hadn't done before, which was a sub-2 deal.
I did.
And it was like the worst decision ever.
I don't know that it was the worst decision ever looking back, because I was able to get into the property for $5,000, which is pretty unbelievable, like a full business. The sub-2 part of it, like if you think of the worst things that can happen in a sub-2, that happened. Like the seller ended up getting really frustrated with me. It was a family selling the business, not just like one person selling the business. And it did create a lot of havoc for about 6 weeks of my life that I didn't know I was buying into. Would I do sub-2 again? I don't know. I would have to look at the deal, but I've learned a lot in the process that leaves me open to considering it, but I'm not going out looking for those deals because I have too many things going to worry about a bank calling in a loan. To this day, even with all the turmoil I went through, the bank hasn't called in the loan.
Well, you're still paying. In theory, like the bank just wants to make sure the note's paid.
That's right.
And if they were to go and look at your track record, they would have given you the loan anyway.
Yes.
So it is in their best interest to let you keep that loan. Yeah. And you've got the backup of
a really great business.
You've got the business, but you also have the backup of your stocks if they did call the loan in order to cover that for you.
Yes.
Was that your decision point?
It was my decision point that we could just write a check for it if something happened. But I still carry the anxiety, and because I run it remotely, it's like, when is that letter gonna show up? And I just don't like having those things weighing over me, because I have bigger concerns that I'm trying to achieve in my life, and like that are, I don't know, it's just, I don't want the bank making a phone call to be a concern for me.
So you purchase this one, you go through the process of getting out of the getting out of the partnership with the original owner, who you needed at the time because they had the license, right?
So then you transfer the licenses and transfer the staff and hire new staff so that it can operate more efficiently. It's been a big process of stabilization. This isn't the kind of business that you can just buy and walk away from and say, oh, I'm going to run it remotely. You know, even with 15 years running remote teams, it still took a lot to get stabilized.
So you stabilized that property, and from what I know about you, you've been looking for the next level up of that type of property.
Yes.
So first of all, you're still running all of your businesses in Iraq. You're coming back and forth looking at these deals, trying to figure out what you're going to buy. You've got one kid in college, you've got a son who's in high school, and you're juggling all of this. How are you prioritizing your time and figuring out where, it's almost like triage, right? How are you figuring out where you're needed most to continue? Because you've got some pretty aggressive goals right now for growing your portfolio. How do you prioritize that? Because you've come back since then and found another property. So how are you prioritizing where you're supposed to be at the moment?
I'm a very gut-driven person, and so it's not like I sit down on Sunday and I say, I'm going to do these things at these times throughout the week. I really just kind of prioritize on what needs me in that moment. I also don't like TV. I don't like social media. I like business. I like growing things. I like achieving things.
It's so funny that you say that, because people be like, what are your hobbies? I'm like, what do you mean hobbies? Like, any kind of hobby I have ever becomes a business. Like, if it seems like a hobby, I've turned it into something that's now a business for us.
Because it should make money. Our hobbies should make us money. And why
people would argue with us on that?
Why pay someone else to be entertained when I can use that same time to find a business or the next property that's going to help me actually make more money and be more secure so that I can keep taking risks.
So you're really just maximizing the time that most people don't.
Yes.
You're not wasting any of that.
Right. And you can talk to our kids, like, they've been in this process with us. They love what we do. I think they're really inspired by what we do. At least that's how they talk about it when they're in front of us, you know, and we haven't had to sacrifice our family. We haven't sacrificed our marriage. We have an incredible marriage. My husband's the most supportive friend that I have. But we really like doing business stuff together. And we love like being able to look back and say, hey, look what we achieved. And so I would just say that's the priority. The priority for us is being able to work together to do these kinds of things, even though he's more focused on, at this point in time, on our different businesses from the real estate, and I'm more focused on the real estate side.
So I know for your next deal, you're going to do a partnership because it's a larger residential assisted living facility, and you had a partnership go about as bad as they can go. How did you get over the, like, I want to call it PTSD. It was so bad for you.
It was bad.
But like shock and the hurt, because like there's the business repercussions, but then like stuff like that truly crushes you.
Yes.
Like your feelings are hurt, you feel betrayed, lied to, stolen from, like all of those negative emotions. How do you go from that to, I think I'm going to have another partnership?
Well, it's a combination of getting some distance and some real healing from that. And having recognized like what was my role in that broken partnership and what was everybody else's role in that broken partnership, and growing from that, and then working with more and more women who just are crushing it at business and real estate. And I also, one of my biggest learnings was better contracts. And I've done a lot of studying and learning about how to write better contracts to protect ourselves.
Everybody says spell everything out in the beginning, but nobody does it on their first partnership. They're like, oh, everyone's amazing people. We're going to go all in.
That's right.
And then you have to get burned. And then you come create a contract.
That's right. And you realize that it's worth paying your lawyer ahead of time rather than paying them at the end of everything. And yeah, there's just so much that I've learned. But I also know what kind of life I live. I know that it's important to me to still have the freedom to travel, to still be able to jump at a minute's notice if we get access to a new conflict zone or the team needs support. And I can't run a business like this because we intend to scale to even more. We don't just want one. I can't run a business like this myself. And so when a friend of mine who is also that I met from the mastermind, when she realized how much she loves traveling, but she also wants to continue to grow her portfolio, it seemed like we actually are a really good match professionally, and we're interested in very similar things. And so we're gonna have a go. I think it's gonna be amazing.
I know both of you, and I think it's a great match. She was actually one of my first students 4 years ago when I started coaching on RV parks. She was one of the first rounds of people, and to see her grow and how curious she is and how detailed she is with everything and how her brain works with systems and processes, I don't think you could have picked a better partner to try a partnership in the real estate side of it as opposed to the business.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm so excited for how this is going to move forward. And I almost don't even have a doubt in my mind that it's going to be successful. Like there's nothing that like in my gut that says, watch out for these things or watch out for that. Not about the partnership, not about the real estate. And I think it's because I trust her really fully in our ability to write out the right partnership contract with our lawyers. But then I also just know that we both individually know how to trust ourselves to get through those really hard times that are gonna come up with every single property and are gonna come up with every single business.
Ladies, it's time to redefine the conference experience with the Society of Entrepreneurial Women Retreats. Step inside a world tailored for women just like you, where you can lead, learn, and unwind in style. Our retreats offer everything from insightful investing sessions to fun activities like salsa dancing, boat cruises, food tours, and so much more, ensuring you come back not just inspired, but truly refreshed. Join a community that celebrates you wholly and supports your every endeavor. Ready for a retreat that changes the game? Visit the link in our show notes and find out how you can be part of this exclusive experience.
Are you hungry?
I'm hungry. Let's go.
I think it's time to eat. So I wanted to talk to you more about partnerships because I feel like this is something that can be really scary or really amazing. And since you had a bad one and you're going into another one, I feel like you've probably had to have some thoughts about that and think it through. Because some of the girls in our group, I feel like I have to say, no, wait a minute. And obviously they make their own decisions, but I say this all the time, but creating a partnership is almost like creating a marriage. And to get out of it, you dang near have to get divorced. So if you don't have that prenuptial agreement that tells you exactly how that's gonna work, it's never gonna be the exact way both of you want, and you're both probably gonna feel sour when you need to part. So as you've thought this through, what's some advice you would give people who are considering a partnership? Do they need to date before they get married? And what does that qualification process look like?
Yeah, I would want to know not only the partner, but other people who know them. And I think this is something that I learned from Middle Eastern culture is, they have like prearranged marriages there, and there's just something about entering into a lifelong decision with someone if there's more accountability around you. And so I think like knowing.
Say, what do you mean by that? So meaning because you're both in our group, I know her, you know her, the other people around us know her, they're gonna be thinking of what will my friends think of me if I screw this person over, this group's gonna feel negative. Like, what do you mean by that?
Right, there's a little bit of societal accountability and support there. Not that anyone would have to choose sides or something like that if something goes sour, but I do think having that like societal accountability is how I think about it is beneficial. And you can know more about a person when you ask their friends about them than what they're going to tell you, right in front of you. I also listen to how people talk about other people. It's something that I've learned because I know if someone's going to come to me and trash their former partner, then when I'm in a bad situation with the partner, and that's going to come, conflict is everywhere, right?
And everybody messes up. We're human.
That's right. And so but I just don't want someone who's going to talk negatively about me. I want someone who's going to be able to own that it takes two people to create a problem and it takes two people to solve it, and that dissolution actually can be the right solution and the right way forward. It doesn't have to mean failure. And so that's one, is like really know the person and about the person from other people.
So this means you do not meet someone at a conference and be like, oh my gosh, we should be partners. And by next week, you're looking for deals together.
I mean, you could have the conversation and by next week, look for deal. I wouldn't buy anything. And I wouldn't even get into the contracting conversation yet. I would want to know someone longer, and I would want to know their history and what have they been successful in. And that doesn't mean that people who haven't had success or are just starting out can't find a good partner. I think that you could find a good partner, but you probably need to recognize what value you're bringing to the partnership and what value they're bringing to the partnership. If I was a newbie starting out and someone really experienced wanted to partner with me, that would be red flags, and vice versa, because like that's not an equal partnership. You got to know what you're bringing to the table on that. And then you have to lock it down in a contract. We just think everybody's so nice until we don't. And so you have to think about it like every clause in the contract, how do you want to relate to this person in good times and in bad times? And you need to assume that conflict is going to come and already have ways written in for how you're going to resolve that conflict.
I've also seen a lot of contracts be pretty one-sided. Yes. And everything can't be perfect for everyone. So learning what you can give and take on in some of those situations. I heard
that's right.
One of our other coaches word it perfectly. She's like, it's literally a breakup plan. Like, what is our breakup plan? And I know I keep relating it to dating and relationships, but it's truly very similar.
And it actually might be more detrimental to you than breaking up with someone that you're just dating. Because you're not contractually committed to them. They don't have any say over what happens with your money. They don't have any rights over your money or your car or your house. But in a partnership, all of that could be sued for unless you have things really spelled out clearly. And so you want that breakup plan.
So you've mentioned a couple times working with your husband. Mm-hmm. And I've also learned that can either be amazing or terrible. What does that look like in your marriage? How do you not have conflict over that? Or maybe you do and it's just healthy conflict. How do you stay married and be so intertwined with business? Because we see some couples really fight over stuff or allow and not allow their spouses to do things. And from your personality, I'm thinking you wouldn't be married to somebody who would tell you what you can and can't do.
We've grown a lot in our marriage. This week, we're actually going to be celebrating 24 years.
Oh, that's amazing.
And we're super passionate people. And so we sometimes have fought in yelling and screaming, but we also both hold our own. And so we can be in professional business conversations and act individually from one another while still being able to support each other at home. And I think that that's really important. But we also have very different skills. He is such a strong visionary, and his strengths are everything creative, writing, marketing, the CEO type is who he is. And he's brilliant at all of that. And I really trust him to lead that forward. Whereas I am more of an integrator. I have a lot of vision too, but I
don't think you're giving yourself enough credit. You're an amazing writer. And you are great at vision as well.
Thank you. I think those are developed skills more than natural skills. Okay. And so for most of my career, I would say I'm a great number 2. And that's where I love to be, but I can lead if I need to lead. So we're really good at dividing responsibility and checking in with each other on how we're moving things forward. But I don't question how's your marketing? What are you doing for marketing tomorrow? Or what's the social media post? Or what this new book that you're writing, is it on schedule? I don't push and pick at those things. I just trust him to get it done. But I also have 24 years of trust built with him that he gets that thing done, But our finances are joined together. We make big decisions mostly together. Sometimes I'm calling and saying, I put in an offer and I forgot to tell you, but it's just an offer at that point, right? And we just try to be each other's cheerleaders more than each other's police.
I love the way you said that. It's such an Instagrammable quote with the be each other's cheerleaders instead of each other's police. But it's true, right? And it's a good reminder because we're all human, and when you're really frustrated with your spouse and picking them apart on something, you gotta remember you're not perfect either.
That's right.
And that can be sometimes hard to remember.
Especially when things are hard. There was a day, I don't know if I should tell the story, but there was a day that I'm coming out of the courthouse dealing with a suit on one of our properties. And I get in the car to call my husband, and he's like, babe, I think we just lost a lot of money on another deal that we were working on. And it was such a good growth point for us in 2 ways. The first one was I wasn't mad because we decided to take the risk together. We had already decided we're going to take this risk. 2, it wasn't done yet, which was good. But lastly, it didn't scare me because we've developed enough skills that we know we can earn money back, which allows us to take big risks because we trust ourselves to be able to earn that back. But we both came out of a really trying situations that we both had kind of done separate from each other, and our ability to reconnect in that moment, even in the like difficulty of it, and not be yelling at each other and blaming each other, but instead recognizing each of our roles and deciding to move that forward. It was like, that sucks. That really sucks. And we're going to have to figure out a way out of it. But we figured out a way out of it, and we got there faster because rather than blaming each other, we took ownership of our part and could move to the solution.
So I think we should point something out. You've talked a lot about successes and failures, and it is not popular to talk about the failures. Or when they do, people like victimize them to the extreme point to where it's a different conversation. And with 20 years in business, I'm 14 years in, you're going to have ups, downs, successes, failures. And if you aren't, you are not pushing hard enough.
That's right.
And the people who have had the failures are the ones you want to learn from, because they are the ones who grew the most. If they have not had a failure yet, they do not know how to teach you.
That's
because right now they're in the great situation of like, it's a good economy, or it's a good time to buy, or whatever, right? The administration is favorable to them right now, or whatever. The second that takes a dip, the person who still survives and comes back out and doesn't give up is the one you want to learn from, not the one who's only got success stories.
Yeah, I completely agree, because if you are only hearing someone's success stories, they're either hiding 50% of their life,
or they're just lying to you.
Or they haven't done the thing
delusional.
right. Maybe, because you cannot succeed without those failures. And if, like you said, if what you're doing, if you're not failing along the way, it's too small and you've got so much more to do, you just can't, you're not willing to take the risk on yourself. And I don't know about you, but I just don't want to live that way.
Same.
I feel like I have this one life and I want to live to the maximum for it, which means I'm going to take really big leaps every chance that I get.
I love that. Well, it's been really nice catching up with you today. Thanks for doing this with me.
I love it.